Hi there, I'm Vartan Badalian, Director of Transportation here in GreenBiz, and this is Electrify 23, the place where we're merging the fleet and sustainability worlds together for those doers well underway on fleet decarbonization. We're at an exciting and critical moment as companies decarbonize fleets. Companies have committed to decarbonize their Scope 1 and Scope 3 transport emissions. The technologies exist, and they're moving fast. But as they do move, they're unlocking new challenges that have not been thought about. And how these companies address these challenges will impact the grid, will impact our fight against climate change, and will impact how you also electrify your operations. Today's program elevates the most pressing challenges that you all are facing in fleet decarbonization. We're going to be speaking about if you should be deploying vehicle-to-grid chargers for your fleet, how to address Scope 3 transport emissions with heavy-duty trucking for your operations, and if and how and when you should actually go about deploying the right charging infrastructure, addressing your utility challenges, and much more. The program is informed by you all right now watching along, and it's designed to drive as meaningful of impact as possible right now for your operations. We also heard you want more breakout networking in a virtual format. So you'll see we've designed certain sessions to have virtual breakout networking within them, and you can see that written on the agenda right now. Within those sessions, 15 minutes at the end will be dedicated to breakout networking with the audience and panelists, so make sure to come ready to turn your camera and mics on. And so, on to the program. For the next 50 minutes, you join my colleague Sarah Golden, VP of Energy, and myself on a true coast-to-coast journey uncovering all of fleet decarbonization with the leading companies and governments. We'll be taking stock of their vehicles, looking at their charging deployments, and uncovering tangible knowledge that you can apply to your own work. Over the course of this journey, we're first starting by looking at the world of the vehicles themselves across light, medium, and heavy-duty electrification, and then we're shifting to the world of charging. For the vehicles, we're speaking to New York City government, Amazon, and Schneider National, all on light, medium, and heavy. For charging, we're speaking to a company called Revel, and It's Electric. Revel on DC fast charging, and It's Electric on detachable cord level 2 charging here in New York City. I couldn't be more excited to be your host today for what I know will be an array of enlightening and thought-provoking conversations with leaders that are decarbonizing fleets. So there's no better way to start than by starting. Let's take stock of where we are on the road to vehicle electrification. With more, here's Sarah.
Thanks, Vartan. First, I want to congratulate you on taking over the wheel for Electrify. This program is a powerful and thoughtful combination of interviews and conversation in service of this growing virtual community, and I am delighted to turn over my Electrify conference chair keys, and I'm honored to ride shotgun on this journey. So much of the conversation in fleet electrification focuses on challenges, so it's easy to forget how much momentum is already underway. Production is ramping up, fleet orders are being fulfilled, and more EV models are being announced all the time. Manufacturers are scaling up passenger cars to the heaviest trucks, known as Class 1 through Class 8 vehicles, that fleet professionals need. And that's a good thing. Research from Kinsey in 2022, surveying 200 of the largest US fleet operators responsible for 1.2 million vehicles, found that 75% have commitments to fleet decarbonization. Of those, 50% have already purchased EVs or plan to, and that number is expected to rise this year. That's in line with what we've been seeing here at GreenBiz. Major companies are announcing bold plans to procure hundreds or even thousands of EVs this year and beyond. This is especially audacious in the harder areas to decarbonize, like heavier duty vehicles. All this points to an industry clearly in transition. Of course, barriers remain, including supply chain issues and vehicle delivery delays. And once a company gets its EVs, new challenges are sure to crop up, such as maintaining charging infrastructure reliability. Companies facing delays have plenty to do in the meantime, like ensuring charging infrastructure is installed and in order by the time they take delivery. Also, stay engaged with the electric utilities throughout the process, a relationship companies ideally would start as early as possible to ensure vehicle uptimes and to avoid additional costs. To see some of this leadership in action, I'm going to toss it back over to Vartan.
Thanks, Sarah. I just love a good explainer, don't you? We just heard from Sarah and what it takes to electrify vehicles right now, and companies are moving. So we're going to turn now and look at this in practice. We're speaking with specific companies and governments doing the work, First up, we're speaking with Keith Kerman, Chief Fleet Officer and Deputy Commissioner of New York City Government. I'm gonna hop on this ferry right now, right behind me, so I don't miss my chat with Keith, while you all watch this beautiful montage film of companies and governments coming up in the rest of the keynote. Let's go. How's it going, Keith?
Great.
Good to see you, yeah. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit. How are you actually deploying so many light-duty vehicles in New York City government right now?
Well, you know, New York City operates the largest municipal fleet in the United States. It's the NYPD, the fire department, the Department of Sanitation. And we have committed to go to an all-electric fleet by 2035 for light and medium-duty vehicles, and for 2040 for the heavy-duty trucks like the fire trucks. And we are making a lot of progress. As we walk here in Central Park today, we have over 4,600 electric vehicles currently serving New York City, out there with our agencies, performing really critical functions, but doing so as zero-emission vehicles, low-maintenance vehicles, quiet, and frankly, a lot of fun. They're great vehicles to drive. So we've made enormous progress. Over 3,000 are light-duty, but we're also beginning to adopt some cargo van electric vehicles, electric pickup trucks. 25% of our fleet is cargos and pickups, so we need to transform that sector, and just making really great progress.
And so what would you say is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome right now in deploying so many light-duty vehicles?
Well, first off, charging is absolutely critical. So we've had to build out a charging network. New York City currently operates over 1,450 chargers just for the city fleet.
Wow.
It's probably the single largest charging network in the country, certainly for a public fleet, maybe anywhere. We started with level 2 charging, the overnight charging, but now we're moving on to fast charging. 183 fast chargers. We'll have 200 a little bit later in the summer, and we've committed to 200 fast chargers every year until 2030. 1,776 fast chargers in total to free ourselves from fossil fuels, and really making great progress on that side as well.
So we've seen some of the parks vehicles right here, but I would love to check out some of the NYPD vehicles as well.
Absolutely.
Let's go check it out. So Keith, talk to me a little bit about what actually has not been a challenge in deploying so many light-duty vehicles that you thought maybe would have been a challenge.
Well, first, everyone gets worried about range in electric vehicles. And it's true that the first electric vehicles were 80 to 100 mile range, and you had to be careful about what you could assign to them. We got through those, and they all worked fine, and now we're at the 200, 250, and range has really fallen out as an issue. So that's been very positive. Also on the maintenance and reliability side. So it's a new vehicle, you're not sure, is this gonna work? Are there gonna be breakdowns? How will it work in cold weather? We are one of very few organizations that have run a lot of electric vehicles over an entire vehicle life. Over 400 electric vehicles, we're now in year 12. And they've achieved over 60% reduced maintenance. They've been more reliable than gas vehicles, far fewer breakdowns, and on super hot days, as we now enter the summer, you're not getting those overheating issues. You're avoiding the idling. The last thing I'll mention is just on adoption. You know, do the fleet operators like them, or is this some kind of mandate and they all don't want to do it, but they have to? Truth is, electric vehicles sell themselves. right? They're quiet, they're clean. Nobody has nostalgia over the tailpipe. It's not positive for anybody. Gassing up stinks. There's no one who says, oh, I can't wait to go to the gas station. And electric vehicles have really helped sell themselves. I think our employees like having them. And certainly as we've got into some of the newer models, like the Ford Mustang, they're asking for them, right? Can you get me one?
So what would you say is, if you had to say super tight, super quick, the biggest recommendation to anyone, whether a company or government, looking to deploy light-duty vehicles that are electric?
Get going. The models are out there, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, all electric. You will save money, right? There is a return on investment on the lower maintenance, getting out of fuel costs, longer lasting vehicles, but it'll extend the acquisition cycles. And really just setting up charging, level 2 charging is not that complicated. We all know how to charge things in our lives, right? Who doesn't have a phone? Those phones are all getting charged and doesn't require a government program. So you will figure out charging. These vehicles will sell themselves, they will save you money, and everyone will like them, right?
If an NYPD can go electric, then...
And of course here we have one of our first NYPD all-electric police vehicles. There's no more difficult operation than policing in the city. And if we can show that you can do that, and our NYPD officers can perform their absolutely critical and dangerous and important functions, and do so in an all-electric vehicle, then anyone can adopt an all-electric vehicle. There's no one out there that's got a harder vehicle use or more challenging need for a car than what our police officers are doing.
So I hear you have some DC fast chargers over there. Want to go check that out?
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about supply chain issues, which have been delaying light-duty vehicle deliveries. How have you gone about preparing your continuation of deploying vehicles in this kind of moment where you may have had delays getting vehicles?
It's true that, coming out of COVID, there have been supply chain issues in the fleet industry, as there have been throughout the country. That said, it really has not stopped anything we're doing. We're still putting in our orders. We don't always get delivery exactly when we want, but we're getting delivery. Our electric vehicle fleet is expanding. So in that sense, we're making a lot of progress despite the supply chain challenges. But it's also a good time to get your charging in place. In the chicken or egg question of electrification, it's the charging, right? You really need to lead with the charging. You want to make sure you don't get a big vehicle delivery before that charging is ready to support it. So we're expanding our fast charging network, growing our level 2 overnight charging, also expanding our solar carports. We operate 110 solar carports and have 50 more being delivered as we speak, all throughout the city to our city agencies. So yes, there are supply chain issues, but they don't have to slow you down. Maybe they delay you here or there, but get your charging in place, get your vehicles ordered, and you can keep making progress on electrification.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
While the light-duty market's the easy area to electrify for fleets, there's a lot happening in medium-duty vehicles as well, and last-mile delivery vehicles. Companies are electrifying those operations right now because they are an easy area to electrify because they're stop-and-go deliveries. 150 miles is usually the perfect range for a vehicle doing that kind of operation. But one of the biggest challenges, actually, is the fact that companies can't find the right vehicles for the job. Amazon's one company that took it upon themselves to work with Rivian to make the right vehicle for their operations. And Sarah's there speaking with Amazon right now, so let's go check it out.
One year ago, Amazon launched its first custom all-electric Rivian delivery van. Today, there are thousands on the road. And the organization has a goal of launching 100,000 by the year 2030. To find out more about that, I'm joined today by Tom Champananical, who is the Director of Global Fleet Last Mile. Tom, congratulations on 1 year.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here to share the journey with you.
So tell me a little bit about the timeline here. How many did you initially launch? How many are on the road today?
Yeah, you almost have to take a step back and go back to 3 years ago. 3 years ago, this vehicle that you see here was a sketch on a piece of paper. And it's amazing for anyone who's been in vehicle manufacturing to say a sketch has gone into a vehicle that's out on the road, and we have thousands of them already out there. So it's a great moment for us to be at this point, and the future is looking pretty amazing as we work our way through.
How did you decide on this vehicle? Why Rivian? What was the process for choosing this vehicle?
Yeah, once we set our goals in terms of what we wanted to do for sustainability and where we needed to take our business, we were very clear that we needed to go down the electrification path. We landed at this point where we said we really need a vehicle that fits with our use case and how our drivers go through the process of delivering packages to our customers. And we found a partner through that said they were willing to partner with us on it and build a vehicle from scratch that fit exactly what we wanted to do with it.
Okay, so it's clear you put a ton of thought into this ahead of time, and also you're doing something new. So I'm sure things like unexpected popped up along the way. What's something that you didn't anticipate that ended up becoming like a challenge that you had to overcome at some point?
Yeah, what's interesting about it is, you try to anticipate a bunch of challenges as you enter a space like this. Some of the challenges you're able to solve and you think you've solved them and they lead to some unintended consequences. In other cases, you find things that you didn't expect to be as big a win that turn out to be a massive win along the way. So I'll try to give an example of each of those. So from a vehicle standpoint, we knew that over-the-air software updates was going to be an available feature for us and it would be there. What we didn't realize was how much of a benefit it was going to be in other things that the driver interacts with on a day-to-day basis. For example, what we started finding is our drivers get in and out of these vehicles hundreds of times every day as they deliver what we call smiles, but packages to customers. And as they're going through that process, they're having to get out of the vehicle, lock the vehicle, go across, deliver the package, and come back. What we found through our keyless entry was you had to find a really sweet spot in terms of at what distance from the door did they need to be before the vehicle locked, and what distance they needed to be before the vehicle unlocked. And there's a sweet spot in there because you need to take driver safety into account, make sure it doesn't unlock too early, but at the same time not make them wonder whether it's locked or not. And we were able to quickly iterate on it and try out different versions of it and try different spots along the way. And through the process, we were able to get it right into that mold. Whereas if you think about it in a traditional vehicle, you would be iterating on that over and over through hardware changes that you were making, or at least plugging in the fob into a system to make those updates. That's been quite incredible. Things like HVAC system changes that we've had to make as temperatures change, as you work in different environments. You can so customize that driver's experience through it that we've found that amazing in terms of a great benefit that we have run into. On the flip side of it, as we've gone through the process of installing thousands of chargers all around parking lots around the country, we have learned a number of things as we've gone through the process. Anytime you dig into the ground, you're always going to find something new, and you never know what you're going to find, and as you go through the permitting process and all of those pieces. But also as you think about the different parts of the charging infrastructure, we have built now a very modular system that we think about as almost Lego bricks, that depending on the environment that you're operating under or the parking lot that you're dealing with, you can fix different pieces together and build out. We're still learning through there. There's a ton more to go as we get them across the network, but that's been one spot where we're constantly iterating with the industry and building from there.
You're further along on this fleet electrification journey than many other companies. If you were starting over again today, what would you do different? What advice do you have for other people following?
One piece that I think we've learned as we've gone through along with it is, we tend to think about battery and range as sort of very much something that you could simulate and just calculate out. The reality of it is it's so driven by the environment that the vehicle is going to operate in, the terrain that it's going to be in, because what you think is a 200-mile range might end up being a 150-mile range in a hot Phoenix summer day, whereas in Minneapolis in that same weather, it might end up being more manageable to get it to work its way through. So having that real world experience and building up through there to know what challenges you might encounter or what routes you want to put these vehicles on is one very important thing that you need to continue to build actual data on. The simulations get us part of the way there, but real world experience of getting vehicles on the road in different weathers with the drivers who would be driving it is the best teacher.
So how many of these vehicles do you have on the road today?
So we have thousands of the vehicles on the road, and we're marching really fast towards our 100,000 goal through 2030.
All right, so what are some of the things you're thinking about to get from this level you're at today to 100,000?
what we have realized is it takes a village to get this thing going and to get it to scale up to the numbers that we are aiming to scale it to. And we've been thankful to have the partnerships that we've built over time, because it takes a little bit of a leap to make as we go through this. And we have also learned that we have to align to the planning horizons that these different teams have to operate under and these companies have to operate under. So for example, with energy, it's very important to provide a 5-year outlook of saying, here's what we need from an energy standpoint. You can't just wake up 6 months before you need power in there and say, I'm ready, now give me the power. And so that has been a great learning, and we've sort of worked with a number of these utility companies, partnered with a number of other companies in the field as well, to be able to provide them a holistic outlook rather than here's Amazon's outlook, here's everyone else's kind of thing. So that has enabled them to make some of those leaps that we've required. And leaps is what it's taken. It's taken leaps from state government, local government folks to get through some of the permitting and other things that we've got to get done. Utility companies to build both the power generation as well as the transmission that's needed to get there. Transport providers to sort of think through, how do I transport an electric vehicle when all I've done is a gas vehicle all my life along the way. And it's been great to see those partnerships actually blossom and those teams to show the energy and the excitement, as well as the pride with which they have come through on that journey. And every time they see a delivery vehicle, an electric vehicle come in and deliver, they know that they played a part in that journey. So that's been exciting, and we've been thankful for the partnerships that we've built to help us scale to that level.
Tell me a little bit more about that driver's experience. How has this transition been for them? Do they like it? What's it like?
We always had drivers coming in, sitting in the vehicle, trying out different things, looking at their range of motions, where they would touch, what they would see.
Let's check it out.
So every part of this vehicle, everything from sort of the moment you walk into the door and those handlebars that you see there to enable 3 points of contact and ensure the safety of the driver. The other piece that's super cool that we get a ton of feedback on is the integration between the driver's sort of work device that shows them where the packages need to be delivered and where they need to go, and this system here. You get to see things like the customer notes, for example, where in this particular case, it says, call me when you're here. And so as they get into the vehicle, look at their next stop, they can already see what activity they need to do or where they need to go. In addition to that, anytime when they're changing lanes, when they're looking, when they're reversing, they get to see on this big screen sort of a full 360-degree view. They get to see what's behind them. All the safety features that are built in from an ADAS standpoint has been a great accelerant for the team as they go through. There's also a lot of other features in terms of the cool things that we hear around the air-conditioned seats, and when it gets really hot, it's all focused around the driver and being able to get air coming through around them and all of them. I've actually wished I get some of those in my car when I drive them around, but it's super cool in terms of the features that they have and how thoughtful it has been as we've gone through the process. Literally everything in this vehicle has been designed with the driver in mind. You wouldn't believe the amount of hours we spent trying to decide what is the right shelf height for each of these shelves, all the way to features such as the ability to fold these shelves and be able to put the larger packages in there if we needed to. And through it all, one of the things that we focused on was making sure that the drivers had enough space to move around the cabin as they sort of get packages out and move in, or they're using things to move larger packages through the system. So that's been our focus as we've gone through safety, the driver convenience as they go through the day, making it easier for them through every step of that journey of delivering packages, or as we call it, smiles for our customers every day of the week.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for showing us this van. It really is amazing.
Thank you very much. This is an exciting journey for us, and we're glad to share it with you.
Medium-duty vehicle electrification is becoming more common, though much is needed to replace the millions of vehicles on the road today, and that includes specialty EVs that OEMs have yet to offer at scale, like utility bucket trucks. But what about the most difficult to decarbonize vehicles, like those giant 18-wheelers? These vehicles, known as Class 8 trucks, pose unique challenges. They would require huge, heavy batteries and often carry freight long distances. Even if the technology were fully here today, it would require new, expansive charging infrastructure, especially for those coast-to-coast routes. Cracking the electrification nut for these vehicles would be significant for global decarbonization efforts. In the US, they represent roughly 28% of transportation emissions, despite only making up 10% of the vehicles on the road. Nevertheless, options are emerging. Truck manufacturers such as Daimler, Volvo, BYD, and Tesla are releasing new vehicles with impressive capabilities. Some fleet owners are already adopting these trucks at scale for those short-haul deliveries. PepsiCo is piloting Tesla semis in Modesto and Sacramento, California. Penske, UPS, and OK Produce are following suit with their own electric trucks. This comes as California adopted the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule that requires all truck sales to be zero emissions by 2036. Schneider National, a leading logistics company, is adopting electric Class 8 semis as it rolls out all electric trucks in California for its intermodal operations. To learn more, I reached out to Robert Reich, Executive Vice President at Schneider National. Rob, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Happy to do so, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
So to start out, let's level set. How many electric trucks do you have on the road, and how many are you planning to deploy?
So our overall plan for electric trucks, Sarah, is to have 92 battery electric vehicles in our intermodal operations in Southern California by the end of this year. We've got half of those on the road today. So we've got 45 trucks in operation already, more being delivered each week. We'll have a majority by the end of September and then 92 by the end of the year.
Oh, that's incredible. And that's out of how many trucks total in your fleet?
Over 10,000 in the Schneider fleet in total. Just there in Southern California in our intermodal fleet, this will actually be half of the trucks we'll have on the road in Southern Cal supporting intermodal will be battery electric.
So what are the best use cases for these all-electric Class 8 trucks?
You know, we're really excited about where we're deploying them. That's in our intermodal dray operations in Southern California. The range is about 220 miles. It can be a little bit longer as the drivers adapt to the truck. But with a 220-mile range, that's going to limit us to things like intermodal dray, where the average length of haul is about 75 miles. A lot of freight right there in that Southern California, Los Angeles region. So it's a perfect application of a truck with 220 miles that also comes back to base so that we have our one charging solution to support all these trucks.
And for a point of clarification, when you're talking about that dray, that's with ports, is that correct?
A little bit of port activity. Most of that for us will be actually the intermodal ramp locations in California. So some of that is coming through the port. A lot of it is just with those rail customers, delivering those containers to the rails, and thus us picking them up and taking them to customers in that Southern California area.
Okay, so you're about halfway towards your goal of transitioning your fleet. What are some things you wish you knew when you got started?
It's a great question. You know, a lot has gone well, and there's definitely lessons that we've learned. A couple things that I would say that go well that we just have to make sure we continue to do is, one, this is a much more complicated implementation of a new technology than just taking new trucks on like we normally do. So we had a lot of really good partner suppliers, and that selection process and finding the right people to work with, I feel like it went well, but it really reinforced you got to work with the right partners to get there. There's some delays going to be in a project like this. And one of the things that we did that we possibly could have even done sooner was we actually brought some temporary charging assets into place. We actually started to take delivery of the trucks before all of the chargers were fully put in place and electrified. And so by having that temporary charger there, our first 5 trucks were able to start doing some work and getting the drivers trained. And so some of those temporary solutions, something we take away as a really good lesson learned. The other thing I think we wish we'd have known is this takes a lot longer than we thought. So if you look at from the initial building plans, engineering plans, and grant application that we did, it was a year or two before we really started construction. Well, what happened during that process was some of the technology changed. So we had our initial engineering plans in place with the chargers, for example. Well, the chargers were a different model 2 years later. And so we had to go back and redo some of the engineering, redo some of the permitting that we had to do with the utilities. And so understanding that that might change probably changes the order that we would have done some of the work.
How long did you think it would take when you started versus what it actually took?
Yeah, if you look at the whole project, it was about 3 years, really, from when we really had those hardcore plans to when just in June that we had a ribbon cutting ceremony there. We thought that would have been about 8 or 9 months sooner. So those various delays that we run into, some of the rework that we had to do, a little bit of permitting delays and those type of things, about a 9-month delay. So we were thinking 2 years and it was closer to 3.
So I want to go back to that point you just mentioned about charging. This is something that I've been noticing with companies that are looking to electrify heavy duty trucks are working with utilities to accelerate that deployment of this new infrastructure. And I know you recently finished installing charging stations in that facility in California. What was the process to make that a reality?
Yeah, and that was the linchpin of much of the project, was getting that right and going through that process to your question. I'll start with just the plan itself. So we've got 16 350 kilowatt charging posts in place, so about a 4.8 megawatt overall power requirement. So really one of the early steps we had to do once we understood that was really our charging plan and requirement for the number of trucks we we're going to deploy, we had to get with the utility and talk about, is 4.8 megawatts available? And if not now, when and what type of infrastructure has to be put in place to do that? Really important piece of advice I would give everybody is have that conversation as soon as possible. But also understand that that might be a couple years before you actually go active. And the utilities demand is going to change over those 2 years. So that's another lesson we took away. Early, it looked like that may not be a problem as we worked on the project and time went by. And there were other demands on the utility in our area of South El Monte. Okay, well, then they had to make other infrastructure changes in order to support us. That was some of those delays that I talked about. So getting with the utility early, understanding just the nature of that plan, and can they support the power? You know, is the grid ready for it is obviously the question everybody's asking themselves. And fortunately, Southern Cal Edison is our utility provider in California, did a great job getting us there. But again, it took a little bit longer. It took a lot of coordination and understanding to make sure we had the right engineering plans to be able to accomplish the goals that we had.
Yeah, so it sounds like start early and find the right partners to make it a reality.
Absolutely.
Well, Rob, it has been a pleasure catching up with you, and I cannot wait to see some of these trucks on the road.
They're beautiful, Sarah. They're orange, so you can't miss them. They look great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The phrase shifting gears doesn't exactly work for electrified vehicles. So let's say it's time to shift power modes to focus on the charging landscape. Though charging infrastructure is proliferating, genuine hurdles still exist for company fleets. Public chargers continue to face uptime and reliability challenges. You've likely seen headlines about frustrated EV drivers encountering broken stations. The same simply can't happen with fleets. It's imperative that business operations run efficiently, or transformational electrification won't happen. The most common speed bumps for fleet managers fall into two categories: regulation and technology. Best practices to avoid these include 1, engage utilities early in your electrification process to ensure a path through permitting, interconnection, and power hurdles. And 2, once chargers are installed, implement a maintenance strategy to ensure their operations run reliably and smoothly. The good news is that utilities are increasingly offering made-ready infrastructure programs for installations. These options help cover some costly parts of deploying charging stations, like bringing power to site and running conduits. The program could also add a new revenue stream for utilities without raising customer electricity rates, according to a recent EDF report. While this may not be true in every situation, it illustrates how new market structures are emerging to accelerate the utility business case for EV charging. To plug into the charging equation, I'm going to hand it back over to Vartan.
Thanks, Sarah. The way I see it, the vehicles are coming in 2023, but we need to ensure charging infrastructure is reliable and scalable. There's a lot happening in the space right now, but there's two companies here in New York, Rebel and It's Electric, that are doing something quite unique. Let's go check it out. 2021, a company known for their electric blue mopeds here in New York City launched what you're seeing right around me. A fleet of all-electric Tesla ride-sharing vehicles accompanied with this public DC fast charging hub, what they're calling super hubs. Since then, fast forward to 2023, and the company has announced many more super hubs to come all across New York City, and it actually opened up a second one already here in Brooklyn, 15 stalls, 150 kW stations, and who better to speak to than with their CEO and co-founder, Frank Reek. Let's go. Frank, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, same here. Pleasure.
Yeah. How's it going?
Good, good. I'm happy to host you here in our Williamsburg location with our 15 fast chargers here. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, let's just dive right in. So, I'm very curious. How are you actually going about finding these locations with such high power? Because that's been a common struggle for people trying to deploy fast charging infrastructure.
I think with any growing company, it starts with the team. Getting the right mix of individuals with the right experience, because the task at hand is a hard one, like you just described. Right? How do you build a site like this in a big, complicated city like New York? I think the second piece is attacking the right elements. Working with utilities, working with our own data sources, finding where is that excess power on the grid today? Where does it actually exist? Then you got to work with the real estate partners. Where is there enough just physical space, real estate in the city to actually put a site like this? There aren't that many locations where that excess power overlaps with real estate. And then can you get a business deal done? Is it a rational landlord? Can you get the other permits you need from Department of Buildings, Department of Transportation? So it's complicated stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variables, a lot of different people, companies, organizations kind of meshing together to deploy a location like this.
Yep.
What is the most common challenge you're experiencing working with utilities or regulatory bodies to get a site like this operational?
Nothing beats access to power.
Power, yeah.
In these dense cities, whether you're talking about a Boston or a New York or San Francisco, they all have very similar problems. Just because you have the right location or you want to put EV fast charging somewhere, that does not mean you can get access to power in the grid. And even if you can get access to power in the grid, maybe it'll take 2, 3, 4 years to get that power to you. So imagine talking to a landlord and saying, hey, I'd love to put chargers here, but in 3 years. Can I get free rent for 3 years?
No.
You can imagine how that conversation goes. So by far, the biggest barrier is access to power.
So then on the flip side, what is one of the biggest benefits of being here in New York and deploying infrastructure at scale like this that may not be occurring elsewhere in the United States?
I would say the biggest advantage for us building in a city like New York is it allows us to really accelerate our first mover advantage. Because where that extra power in a grid, where it overlaps with real estate at a site like this, it matches up with zoning, as I mentioned earlier, they're so few and far between. What Revel's doing right now is locking all those sites up before the eventual fast mover, fast follower comes. Right? So that's really exciting to us. I think it plays into our entire strategy, which is build before anybody else, build at scale, have the first network of fast charging in a city like this that's accessible, reliable, ubiquitous around the city.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So then, what do you think you learned from deploying this location that didn't happen in the first location that you deployed? Because this is the second location.
I would say one thing we learned is every single site has its unique engineering construction challenges. There is no perfect site, right? And we saw that from our first site, now our second site. I would say something more tangible would be something like Wi-Fi. Our first site, we had Wi-Fi connected chargers, realized never again. Every single site moving forward is going to be hardwired. The last thing we need is reliability issues due to Wi-Fi, right? So that's just a tangible example, but many things like that.
Yeah, that's a super small thing, but impacts in a huge way.
Yeah.
Then ties into my next question, which is on reliability and uptime, because that is the most common issue with fast charging infrastructure. How are you ensuring reliable EV charging in your hubs?
I think first you just have to admit to the reality. Things are going to break. So make sure you understand what parts are most likely to break and make sure you have them in inventory, and also make sure you have the team on the ground to get that work done quickly. So it sounds simple, but it's hard to execute on all of that day in and day out.
Yeah.
I think another piece would just be the OEM relationship. We've used Tritium now at our first site and now at our second site, continuing to deepen that relationship. You can't do anything in this industry alone.
So you kind of named off a lot of the things I was probably going to say in my next question, which is if you were to tell any kind of advice to anyone doing what you're doing, what would it be?
Make sure you hire the right team. Because what we are doing is grounded in real estate. And real estate is a relationship business. And you need the relationships. That's not something you're going to see in the spreadsheet, but it is very real. You need the relationships at the utility level, you need the relationships at the political level, you need the relationships within ownership of certain properties and landlords in general. You need that reputation. Yeah. So I would say it all goes back to team.
The people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
What we keep hearing from people. People need people.
Exactly.
I appreciate it. I mean, truly, if you can make it here in New York, I think you can make it anywhere.
Yep.
Doing what you're doing. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
I have
you.
to actually go chat with It's Electric
Okay.
here in Brooklyn. Do you mind if I take a Revel as well?
Absolutely.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we just explored the realities of deploying high-power charging infrastructure at scale here in New York, but now we're shifting gears. We're speaking with a company called It's Electric, which is deploying a new model here in the United States that's very common in Europe, detachable cord level 2 EV charging. We're speaking with Tia Gordon, their Chief Operating Officer and co-founder, so let's go. Tia, so great to be here with you.
Good to see you.
Yeah? I have so many questions for you. Why launch a new level 2 EV charging company when the market is so saturated?
Exactly. So the market is super saturated, but that's in every other condition except a city. So if you live in the suburbs, if you're talking about the highways, there's a billion other solutions out there, but the cities across the United States are being completely ignored. And so that's why It's Electric exists, to focus on areas with dense on-street parking, dense traffic.
Gotcha. So talk to me a little bit about what makes your business model unique, right? You have a detachable cord, but there's other aspects as well. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the two big differentiators for us are design and community. Number one is design, is we have a small bollard-style curbside charger. It's supposed to fit in with our fabric. It doesn't look like a gas pump. And two, it's a detachable cord. We detach on both ends. When the charger is not in use, the cable's in the car with the driver and it's not on street. So that's the design aspect to it. And community is the way that we actually power our chargers. This charger is not connected to the utility in the street. That's how all other chargers in the city, outside the city, everywhere else need to make their connections. This is an 18-month permitting process and it's incredibly costly. And this is what slows cities down in the deployment of infrastructure. But the beauty of It's Electric is that infrastructure barrier we completely avoid because we power our chargers from spare capacity in buildings like this. This is an old bank building that was erected in the 1980s. It's been sitting here basically abandoned in Sunset Park. And now we're powering 3 chargers from the spare capacity. So a level 2 charger is the same power as electric dryer. It's the same as if I put in a dryer in the basement of this building, but instead of it being a dryer, I have that appliance sitting on street and it's a public charger. And why would the building let me do this? Because I'm revenue sharing with them. Yep. So they're getting passive income every month just by hosting this small charger on their curb.
So what are some challenges that you've been able to overcome by deploying this first location that you hope to implement into your next locations?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest challenge is seeing is believing. Everyone that we spoke to across the board said, well, that seems like a really simple and logical idea. If it's so easy, why isn't everyone doing it? Mm-hmm. And the reason is because no one thought to do it. Yep. And so everyone said, well, let's see it, and then we'll believe. So we had to install our first installation here. Our partner in New York City is the Economic Development Corporation. This is their property, so they're letting us use their building to deploy these chargers. And now we know that it works, and things are moving incredibly fast now that we've got these first chargers in the ground. And you were here for our ribbon cutting 2 months ago. You witnessed the first charge.
Which is very exciting.
Yes.
So how does someone get a handle on this handle?
Great question. So ultimately, vehicle OEMs will provide this level 2 cable the same way they do in the EU and the UK. Right now in the US, you just get that level 1 trickle charger in your car. But ultimately, once there is a network of sockets to plug into, you'll get this in your car. But until then, as a stopgap, It's Electric gives that to the drivers when they sign up to work with us.
Gotcha. So final question. In the next 5 years, do you hope to be the only ones doing this, or do you think the market has adopted what you're doing here in the US with a detachable cord?
Well, it is the predominant way to charge in the EU and the UK for urban areas. So we are absolutely the first in North America. We keep looking around and waiting for everyone else to jump on board. No one has done it yet. We are right now the only people in North America with a detachable cord. We're the only curbside bollard that's also built America by America to meet the Biden provisions. And we're the only behind the meter solution, meaning we're the only company right now that's powering our chargers from buildings. We like to say cars powered by buildings. Those two combinations together are what we feel make us very, very, very centered on cities, because no one in a city wants something that looks like a gas pump on a residential block. We're in a more industrial area right now, but when you look at your more residential areas, your townhomes, your multi-unit dwellings, you want something small, discreet. You want this to feel like basically the fire hydrant of 2023.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going for.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna get there. It's so great chatting with you.
Yeah,
Thank you
for
so much for the
coming.
time.
Yeah, a pleasure.
Wow, what a journey. You just saw Sarah and myself visit some of the most exciting EV programs across the country. We saw the vehicles, we saw the charging stations, and we saw companies deploying them right now. And one thing stood out to me that was very crystal clear. We are in full force transitioning from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric, and it's happening right now. But the reality is that we're nowhere close to being done, and climate change is unfolding right before us right now. It's genuinely up to all of us, all of you watching right now, the doers, the change makers, the visionaries, to take this tremendous work that's been already done, that we've already witnessed happen right now, and build on it, move faster, move together, because we have to act now. I'm personally seeing this work happen on a day-to-day basis in the GreenBiz Transport Network, where companies and governments are working together monthly, meeting monthly to discuss the most pressing challenges and unlock the most important solutions to decarbonize their fleet operations. If you're interested to learn more about the GreenBiz Transport Network, check out the link in the chat right now and learn more about joining. And so, it's your turn to get involved. The breakout sessions are starting momentarily, and we're going to be looking at the most pressing topics happening right now in fleet decarbonization, and you'll get to collaborate live with your colleagues doing the work now. I can't wait to see you there, so let's go.